Despite heated criticism from religious and civil rights groups, New York Congressman Peter King kicked off the first of a series of controversial hearings today on homegrown Muslim extremists who he says threaten United States security. Take a look.
Let me make it clear today that I remain convinced that these hearings must go forward, and they will. To back down would be a craven surrender to political correctness and an abdication of what I believe to be the main responsibility of this committee, to protect America from a terrorist attack.
So, are these hearings about safety or bigotry? With me now to debate this are two people who spoke passionately at the hearing today. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas. Welcome to the show, you guys. Dr. Jasser, you agree with King that it's mostly Muslims we need to be concerned about. What about someone like Timothy McVeigh? He wasn't Muslim. How do you answer that?
Well, listen, you can have other hearings for other things, and the bottom line is I, as a Muslim, can help you fix Muslim radicalization. The vast majority of Muslims would turn in a Muslim. Every Muslim I know would turn in a Muslim if they knew they were going to do something violent. But the issue is, if we really want to treat the problem, we've seen the most attacks threatened against our homeland in the last 2 years than ever before. There's something we're doing, Joy, that's failing. And if we're going to treat that, we have to walk it back and look at the disenfranchisement, the lack of identification of Muslim youth. And I, as a Muslim, am the only one that can treat that. So it's very appropriate to engage Muslims to fix the Muslim issue with a Muslim solution.
Okay, Congresswoman, how do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I welcome Dr. Jasser's participation, and I know that he could engage with the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, our intelligence authorities. They would all welcome his participation. But a hearing that was already orchestrated to demonize and to, in essence, isolate one particular group is religious discrimination. And one thing that came to our minds after 9/11, which I was very close to as a member of the United States Congress, actually at the Congress as I watched the smoke billow from the Pentagon, members gathered after that and stood on the steps and said, "God bless America." We sang that song because we know how important our values are, that no matter what happened, we would not be denied our freedom of expression or freedom of religion. What happened today was an orchestrated hearing to isolate, as I say, one group of people, rather than to secure legitimate information so that we could find a way to solve elements of radicalism which fall in all communities, from the Timothy McVeigh incident to the Jared Loughner incident. But if we're going to look at radicalism, let's look at it from all aspects.
Okay.
But I think one of the things you're missing, of the last 220 terror arrests in this country, over 180 were Muslims. So you can have other hearings, but if we're going to, I mean, it's almost as if we're putting up this discussion that if you even call it Muslim, you can't do that. So it brings a paralysis where we can't even fix the problem. And we end up being stuck. And you can't, and basically we're surrendering to an enemy that has hijacked my religion. I can't be involved in a reform process because my country, basically, anytime somebody talks about Islam, makes it seem like we're all Islamophobic, and you bring about paralysis and polarization. And I think that is just terrible. We're not going to get to a solution.
Well, I vigorously disagree. I vigorously disagree, because what I've already said, Dr. Jasser, is that you are a Muslim. And I indicated, by the way, Joy, that Dr. Jasser was there, another Muslim was present, and the comment had been made that Muslims don't cooperate. And frankly, with these Muslims before us today, that obviously was a non-starter. But Dr. Jasser can work within his community. He does not need a public forum that gives to the world and gives to America the sense that the only danger to the United States are Muslims. There are 2.6 million to 3 million Muslims in this country. And 1 out of 30,000, with the 200 that he alleges that have been arrested, my numbers show 100, have been arrested for radical extremist acts. That does not speak to labeling a religion, a faith, as being radical, and that is what this hearing did today. It did not add to any enhancement of how we can best address the question of radicalism in our country.
Dr. Jasser, let me interrupt for a second. Isn't it a bad idea to alienate the Muslim community at home with all the volatility in the world right now? Why provoke the Muslim community the way it seems to be doing with these hearings?
Joy, there's a certain group that wants to provoke this into being all about labeling, but at the end of the day, the negativity towards Islam is over 60% now, and it was 30% 5 years ago. And over 70% of New Yorkers said recently they don't think Muslims are doing enough about terrorism. So set aside these hearings. The best way to melt away that fear is for us to see Muslims leading the charge. We need this public forum, Congresswoman, because so far the groups that are already well-funded from abroad or have a political lobbying group for Islamists have taken over the mic and have taken over the attention of America, and the vast majority of Muslims that are not organized have not been given a voice, and that's what these hearings are finally doing, is showing that we're diverse.
Muslims helped foil 7 of the last 10 terror plots in the United States.
Yes.
So aren't you worried that this could make Muslims less willing to cooperate with officials in anti-terrorist efforts? It could make them angry that they're being singled out like this.
I couldn't disagree more. I've said, and all of us say, that yes, Muslims are turning in that final step when it's an act of violence, but radicalization is a process over years, and that radicalization we can treat best at its core. It's like trying to treat lung cancer by just cutting out tumors.
Congressman, you have the last word, and then I have to go.
What Dr. Jasser fails to capture is this very little book here that indicates that we have the freedom of expression and the freedom of religion. What he fails to understand is that changing hearts and minds comes one by one. The Muslim doctor, the Muslim teacher, the Muslim community leader, and they exist all over America from different countries are here, patriots. I've seen them in Iraq, I've seen them in Afghanistan, Americans wearing the uniform. I don't know if you begin a hearing with a predisposition that says that all Muslims are radical, that we don't need the mosque, 80% of the mosques are radical, then where are you going? You're going to further isolate the Muslim community so they don't want to be engaged. And law enforcement needs them to be engaged. I implore Dr. Jasser to take the leadership and speak to the people from his forum. We don't need a congressional hearing that condemns a whole group of people. That is, in my belief, unconstitutional in terms of the First Amendment.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you both very much. We'll be back.